There's that famous line from The Devil Wears Prada. It's not just blue. That line talking about a sweater shows the importance of the fashion industry.
Over the years, designers have helped transform not only the way we look, but the way we live our lives. So joining us now to talk about fashion history is our fashion expert and blogger of morethanturquoise.com, Jamie Lewinger. I love this. I love the fashion history. I love the last segment we did talking about fashion history.
Yeah, learning a lot about the backstories of a lot of these brands and designers, I think is fun. So, history lesson number 2, Jamie, what do you have for us?
Okay, so last time we talked about Chanel and Lagerfeld and Yves Saint Laurent, but now we're going to talk about, so I decided let's choose 6 more and just learn a little bit about them.
Great.
So we're going to start with 2 very interesting designers.
Okay.
The first is Emilio Pucci.
Okay.
So I've mentioned Pucci before. Pucci's known for these fabulous patterns, kind of like the pattern that's behind you guys on the wall. But he was born into one of Florence, Italy's oldest and most noble families. He's a fashion designer. He was also a politician. He is known as the Prince of Prince.
Okay.
With the vivid colors and all the patterns. And so, but he also worked with stretchy fabrics. So he did swimwear. He was one of the first people that had wrinkle-free fabrics. So he made wrinkle-free silks.
Cool.
And people like Jackie Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe were huge fans. Still, they're not alive, but Pucci's designs still go on. But what he's really known for, one of the things that was interesting was there used to be an airline, Braniff Airlines, back in the day, and Pucci went and redesigned the pilots, the stewardesses, and the grounds crews uniforms.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that was kind of history making and fun.
Yeah, and then the second.
The other designer is Vivienne Westwood, and otherwise known as Dame Westwood.
Dame Westwood.
So
Really?
she's an English designer. She's been around for quite some time. Why we know her? She brought punk and new wave to the forefront.
Okay.
So she
you can kind of see that in her headshot
well, she brought skulls and razor blades and spiked dog collars.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and back in the 70s. But 2 interesting things. So do you remember in Sex and the City when Carrie got married, she got to pick through all these wedding dresses to decide which one she was going to wear to marry Mr. Big? I don't know if you guys saw that. She chose a Vivienne Westwood dress, which was interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
And then Pharrell, that big hat, that's a Vivienne Westwood hat.
Is it really?
It was everywhere.
Yeah.
That buffalo hat is Vivienne Westwood.
Man, that's cool. Okay, who's next?
Okay. So who is next is Jimmy Choo and Musea Prada. So Jimmy Choo, we know him as, he's a Malaysian fashion designer. We know him for his handmade women's shoes. He comes from a family of cobblers. He made his first pair of shoes when he was 11 years old. Wow. Yeah, his last name was actually Chow, but there was like C-H-O-W, but there was a misprint on his birth certificate, so they had Choo, and so he just ran with it.
That's great.
Yeah, but and Princess Diana was a huge fan. That's the only shoes she ever wore.
Really? Wow.
Pretty much.
Okay.
And then Musea Prada. Okay, so she is the youngest daughter of youngest granddaughter of Mario Prada from the Prada fashion house. She is at the helm, and she came in a few years ago. But what's interesting is she was an unlikely candidate because she was part of the Italian communist family. She was a mime performer. I mean, she did these interesting things before she got into the fashion industry.
Wow.
But she made the Prada company a $1 billion business. They are in everything: menswear, ready-to-wear, perfume, etc. And she started the line Miu Miu because she is Musea Prada. Her nickname is Miu Miu. Okay. And Miu Miu is the lower line version of Prada, lower price line. It's still expensive, but it's really her design.
Relatively speaking, here, Jamie.
And they're based off of her style, and they have a huge following. She has a huge following with Miu Miu.
Okay, and then of course you have our last 2 here.
Yep, the last
who do
2.
we have?
So Alexander Mcqueen, British fashion designer. He used to head the house of Givenchy from 1999 to early 2000s. He designed for David Bowie and Bjork. He was very controversial. He took a lot of risks. He had naked models with gas masks, and he committed suicide. He's deceased. He hung himself a few years ago. He's very talented, and people really love his designs. It was kind of like at the peak of people understanding who he is. And so he shocked the fashion world in 2010 and all the people that knew him. Yeah. And then the last designer is Stella McCartney, and she is the daughter of Paul and Linda McCartney. Really? And and so she grew up in a life of privilege, but they did not want her to the children to not do something. So she really was interested in fashion and design. She started designing at age 13. She apprenticed at Christian Lacroix, which is the designer of my vintage earrings that I'm wearing today.
Okay.
But she went on to be the creative director of Chloe in France, and so she made that the #1 brand in Paris, in France. But she opened her own line in around 2000, and the reason we know her is she's been a vegetarian her whole life, and so any of her products, no fur, no leather.
Really?
Okay.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's hard to design with no leather.
Yeah.
And so, but PETA loves her. You know, if that's your mission, everybody loves that.
Yeah.
Now, does she do faux leather? Does she do things that even resemble, or is she?
She sticks mainly with textiles like alternates, like
Okay.
wool and heavy fabrics. Some of her things are just absolutely beautiful. And so, but she's one of the few designers that won't choose to use either.
Wow, that's great. All right. Well, you got your history lesson here, folks. For more information on that, head over to casa.com. Of course, we'll have links to More Than Turquoise. You've always got great things going on
Thank
your blog,
you.
Jamie.